What happens when the thing you do for a flicker of attention sets your entire world on fire? How does the person who promised you forever become the architect of your perfectly documented ruin? And can a single, stupid, drunken mistake, captured in the corner of a wedding video, reveal the truth that you were never the strong one in the relationship at all? I thought I was the sun in our universe. It turns out I was just a match, and she was the one holding it, waiting for me to give her a reason to let it drop. Her name is Clara. Was Clara. To me, anyway. She's still Clara to everyone else, of course. She's probably more herself now than she ever was with me. I used to think of her as quiet. I mistook her silence for compliance, her calm for a lack of passion. I was the vibrant one, the one who filled our apartment with noise and people and life. I planned the parties, I told the stories, I was the one our friends would gravitate toward at dinner. Clara was the steady hand on my back, the gentle smile from across the room, the one who made sure the bills were paid and the fridge was stocked. I told myself we were a perfect balance. What I really meant was that I was the performance, and she was the stage manager, working tirelessly in the dark so my spotlight never wavered. Our wedding was my ultimate production. I spent 18 months on it. Not on the marriage, but on the wedding. I obsessed over the floral arrangements, the custom cocktail napkins, the specific shade of ivory for my dress versus the cream for the bridesmaids. Clara had only 2 requests, that we write our own vows, and that her elderly grandmother could sit in the front row with an unobstructed view. I'd sighed, dramatically of course, about the seating chart logistics, but accommodated. Her requests were always so reasonable. So simple. It was almost boring. I wanted fireworks, drama, a grand romantic gesture. She just wanted to be married to me. Properly. That was a word she used a lot. Properly, let's do this properly. Let's file this properly. Let's resolve this properly. I used to find it quaint. Now that word chills me to the bone. The wedding day itself was flawless, a testament to my meticulous planning. The sun shone, the string quartet didn't miss a note, and everyone said it was the most beautiful ceremony they'd ever seen. Clara cried during my vows. I didn't cry during hers. Hers were quiet, simple, and deeply personal. They were about building a life, about quiet mornings and shared burdens. Mine were more poetic, full of sweeping promises and grand declarations designed to make the audience tear up. And they did. I remember looking out and seeing my friends dabbing their eyes, and I felt a surge of victory. I had done it. I had produced the perfect day. The mistake happened late into the reception. The open bar I'd insisted on was flowing freely. I was high on champagne and adrenaline and the sheer success of it all. Clara was talking to her grandmother, her back to me, her posture perfect as always. And Sasha, my maid of honor, my best friend since college, was laughing beside me. Sasha was like me, a little too loud, a little too much, always looking for the next thrill. We'd had a messy, undefined history in our early 20s, something we'd both laughed off as youthful experimentation before I met Clara. She's so good, Sasha slurred, gesturing with her champagne flute towards my new wife. How do you not get bored? I felt a flash of irritation. It was the same thing I'd been secretly asking myself. The stability I craved was starting to feel like a cage I'd built for myself. I keep things interesting, I boasted, my voice slick with alcohol. And then came the stupid, reckless idea. It was a dare, unspoken, but hanging in the air between us. A test. A way to prove to Sasha, and maybe to myself, that I was still the wild girl she used to know. The videographer was on the other side of the dance floor, focused on the old couple swaying to a slow song. We were in a corner, near the towering cake, momentarily obscured. Watch this, I whispered. I pulled Sasha closer, her back against the wall, and my hand, the one with the brand new, heavy gold wedding band, slid up her thigh, under the silky cream fabric of her bridesmaid dress. It was a fleeting, clumsy, drunken gesture. It lasted maybe 10 seconds. Her eyes went wide, a nervous giggle escaping her lips before she pushed my hand away. We both looked over at Clara. She hadn't moved. She was still smiling at her grandmother. Nothing happened. The world didn't stop. I felt a pang of disappointment, quickly followed by a wave of shame that I washed down with more champagne. The rest of the night was a blur. The next morning, the silence in our honeymoon suite was the first sign. It wasn't a comfortable, sleepy silence. It was a heavy, weighted quiet that felt like it was actively absorbing all the sound in the room. Clara was already awake, sitting in an armchair by the window, fully dressed, sipping a cup of tea. She looked out at the ocean. "Good morning," she said, without turning. Her voice was perfectly level. Not cold, not angry. Just level. It was more terrifying than if she had been screaming. I mumbled a reply, my head pounding. I waited for the accusation, the fight, the tears. I had my excuses ready. I was drunk. It was a stupid joke. It meant nothing. But the questions never came. She never mentioned it. We went to breakfast. We went for a walk on the beach. She was polite, attentive even. She asked if my head hurt. She ordered me a bottle of water. She behaved exactly like a wife on her honeymoon. But she didn't hold my hand. When I reached for hers, she shifted her bag to that shoulder, a seamless, natural movement that was a complete and total rejection. The next few weeks were the same. On the surface, everything was normal. We went back to work. We had dinner with friends. We unpacked our wedding gifts. But the air in our home had changed. It was thin, brittle. The silence grew. It took up space, sitting between us on the sofa, lying in the bed. I tried to fill it, talking incessantly about my day, about office gossip, about nothing. She would listen, nod, and give one-word answers. Yes, no, okay. She stopped asking about my day. She stopped leaving little notes for me on the counter. She started closing her office door, something she'd never done before. I told myself she was just tired from the wedding. I told myself she was busy with a big project at her architecture firm. I told myself a lot of things. The first concrete clue was the sound of the printer. It would word a life late at night, after I'd gone to bed. A single page, then silence. It happened 3 or 4 times a week. When I asked her about it, she just said, printing some schematics for work. It was a perfectly plausible lie. The next thing was the bank statement. It came in the mail, and I opened it out of habit. I saw a one-time withdrawal from our joint savings account for $5,000. It was coded as a wire transfer. When I confronted her, my heart hammering with a vague, formless dread, she didn't even look up from her laptop. A deposit on a piece of furniture for the firm's new lobby, she said calmly. I'll be reimbursed again, plausible, believable. But it felt wrong. The quiet confidence in her voice was absolute. She wasn't trying to convince me, she was stating a fact I was expected to accept. The turning point came a month after the wedding. She was out at a site visit, one that would take all day. Her office door was closed, but for the first time, I realized it wasn't locked. I'd never violated her privacy before. We had a foundation of trust that I had, ironically, believed was unshakable. But her quiet was driving me insane. I needed to know what was happening behind that placid, polite mask. I pushed the door open. Her office was, as always, immaculate. Her desk was clear except for her laptop and a single, thick, black binder. It was sitting perfectly square in the center of her desk blotter. It wasn't hidden. It was displayed. It felt like a trap, but I couldn't stop myself. The label on the spine was printed in her neat, architectural block lettering. It just said, Project. My hands were shaking as I opened it. It was not a project for work. It was a project about the end of us. The first page was a screenshot from the wedding video. It was grainy, taken from a distance, but unmistakable. There we were, Sasha and I, in the corner by the cake. And there was my hand, clearly visible under the hem of her dress. Beneath the image was a timestamp, 10:47 and 13 seconds p.m. The next page was another screenshot, a close-up this time. Clara must have paid the videographer extra for the raw footage and spent hours going through it frame by frame. In this one, you could see the glint of my new wedding ring. The next page was a log. A simple table, created in Excel. Date. Time. Event. Notes. It started the morning after the wedding. 9:14 a.m. Narrator initiated physical contact, hand-holding. Avoided 7:22 p.m. Narrator initiated conversation about future plans. Responded with minimal engagement. It went on for pages. She had been documenting every single interaction, every cold shoulder, every clipped response. She was building a case. My blood ran cold. This wasn't a hurt wife. This was an architect designing a demolition. I flipped through the binder, my breath catching in my throat. There was a copy of the bank statement with a $5,000 withdrawal. Tucked behind it was a receipt. It was from a top-tier divorce law firm. The payment was for a retainer. It was dated the week after our wedding. There were printouts of my social media, showing me at happy hour with Sasha 2 weeks after the wedding, something I told her was a work dinner. There were printouts of our shared phone bills, with the number of texts between me and Sasha highlighted. She had been collecting evidence, quietly, methodically, while I was babbling about my day and complaining that she seemed distant. She wasn't distant. She was busy. I closed the binder and placed it back exactly where I found it. I felt numb. The sheer, cold efficiency of it all was breathtaking. She hadn't screamed or cried or thrown things. She hadn't accused me. She had simply gathered her facts. She had prepared. I walked out of her office and sat on the sofa in the silent living room, waiting for her to come home. When she walked through the door hours later, she gave me that same placid smile. "Hey, you're home early," she said, placing her keys in the small ceramic bowl by the door, just like she did every day. I couldn't speak. I just stared at her. She must have seen it in my eyes. The panic. The discovery. She didn't flinch. Her expression didn't change. "Would you like some tea?" she asked, her voice soft. It was the calmest, most violent question I had ever heard. That night, I tried to talk to her. I tried to apologize, to explain. I followed her into the kitchen, my words tumbling out in a desperate, pathetic stream. "Clara, I saw the binder. I'm so sorry. It was a mistake. It meant nothing. I was drunk and stupid. Please, just talk to me. Yell at me. Throw something. Please, just do something." She continued making her tea. She filled the kettle, selected a mug from the cupboard, placed a tea bag inside. She moved with a deliberate, unhurried grace that was excruciating to watch. She didn't look at me. "There's nothing to talk about," she said, her voice even. "It's all in the documentation. It was one stupid mistake." I cried, my voice cracking. The kettle began to whistle. She turned off the stove and poured the hot water into her mug. She looked at me then, for the first time. Her eyes weren't filled with hate or anger. They were clear. That was the worst part. They were just clear. "Was it?" she asked, a genuine, curious question. The hand under the dress was one thing. The lying about dinner with her 2 weeks later was another. The constant need for attention from anyone but me, that's not a mistake. That's a pattern. She picked up her mug. "I'm not angry, you know," she said, her voice softening just a fraction, which made it 1,000 times more brutal. "I'm just finished," and with that, she walked out of the kitchen, leaving me standing alone with the echo of her words. Finished. The papers were served 2 days later. She didn't do it at home. That would have been too messy, too emotional. She did it properly. I was at a cafe near my office, having lunch with a coworker. A man in a suit approached our table. He asked if I was me. I nodded, confused. He placed a thick manila envelope on the table between my salad and my iced tea. "You've been served," he said, and walked away. My coworker stared, her mouth open. I felt 100 pairs of eyes on me. My public performance, the one I had cultivated my entire life, had finally culminated in this. A public humiliation, executed with surgical precision. Inside the envelope was everything I had seen in the binder and more. A petition for dissolution of marriage. A motion for exclusive use of our apartment, citing emotional distress. A comprehensive list of our assets, already neatly divided. She had done her homework. The legal battle was over before it even began. I had no defense. She had the video. She had the logs. She had the receipts. She had the truth, printed and collated and bound. Our last meeting was in her lawyer's office to sign the final papers. I had tried calling her, texting her, emailing her for weeks. She never responded. Seeing her across that polished mahogany table felt like looking at a stranger. She was wearing a simple, elegant gray dress. Her hair was pulled back. She looked calm. She looked peaceful. I, on the other hand, was a wreck. I hadn't slept. I'd lost weight. I was a ghost of the confident, vibrant woman I had been just a few months ago. My lawyer mumbled legal jargon, and I just nodded, signing where he told me to sign. When it was over, Clara stood up. She gathered her things and turned to leave. "Clara, wait," I whispered. She paused at the door, her hand on the knob, but didn't turn around. "Why?" I asked, the one word containing all my confusion, all my pain. "Why couldn't you just yell at me?" She was silent for a long moment. I could see the line of her shoulders, the perfect posture she always maintained. "Because you would have enjoyed the drama," she said, her voice still quiet, still level. "You would have made it about your guilt, your redemption. You would have made a scene, and I would have been the audience for it. And I'm done being your audience." She opened the door. "I hope you find the attention you're looking for," she said, and then she was gone. The door clicked shut, a soft, final sound that ended everything. It's been 6 months. The divorce was finalized in record time. She got the apartment, of course. I'm living in a small studio across town. Our friends, who I thought were my friends, politely excused themselves from my life. They chose the quiet dignity of Clara over my chaotic mess. I don't blame them. I see her sometimes, from a distance. Last Sunday, I was walking through the park, and I saw her on a bench near the dog run. She was with our golden retriever, Leo, and one of her friends from the firm. She was laughing, a real, deep, uninhibited laugh. The sun was catching her hair, and she looked light. She looked free. Leo rested his head on her lap, and she stroked his ears, her smile so genuine it was like a punch to the gut. She never looked that peaceful with me. I realized then that the silence I had found so boring was her peace. I wasn't the life of the party. I was the noise that disturbed her quiet. I wanted a spark, and in my selfish, desperate need to feel seen, I burned down the only home I ever really had. And as I stood there, watching her live the life she had so properly and meticulously built for herself in my absence, I finally understood. She didn't destroy our marriage. She just documented its demolition. I was the one who had swung the wrecking ball.